Coding challenge review, intermediate. Question number 1. The very first thing we need to do is to multiply a couple of things, right? So, how many arguments do we have? 2, correct. Okay. What type of arguments do we have? Functions, that's correct. Is the streaming on, by the way? Did anyone check?
It's working.
Not yet?
It's working.
It's working, thank you.
On YouTube? Yes.
So first argument, function 1 and function 2. As a variable list. So you use, nice. We'll see that in a minute. We'll see that in a minute, Bala. That's interesting, actually. What you said is very interesting. But let's keep it simple. Let's use 2 functions for now. So then, generally speaking, we want to invoke both functions, the first and the second, and then we simply want to return the result of multiplying what this function returns, right? 2 multiplied by 3, 5 multiplied by 7, and so on. Right? How do we invoke function 1? Yeah? Brackets, parentheses, multiply the function 2, right? Correct. Will this work? Why not? Correct. Even though I believe the strategy is correct, in the last case, what happened? We don't have function 2, right? So, how do we control what happens if we have or we don't have function 2? If else. Let's use if else. If function 2, return that, right? Else what? If we just have function 1, function 1, like that, right? Correct. It works. All good. Can we use a ternary operator? Yes. No, Michael, you are now dealing with the ternary operator, right? So with the ternary operator, we do return condition. What's the condition?
Fn2.
Correct. Then?
Fn1 multiplied by 2.
Correct. Else?
Fn1.
Correct. That will be the equivalent, right? And that will work as well. And because this is pretty simple, can we inline it? Excuse me. Right. Like that, right? And that works. And also, is there a way to avoid the ternary operator?
Yes.
How?
Set default value. Default argument.
Correct. What's the default argument of function 2?
Equals, parentheses, arrow function, 1.
Correct. So what that means is, we'll do a workshop about that specifically, but for now we say, hey, if function 2 is provided, then just use it. If not, then use that function instead, right? Why 1 and not 0? We are multiplying, right? Yeah. So if we don't have function 2, but we say that by default return 0, if this is 5 multiplied by 0 is 0, which is wrong, right? So according to the spec, if we just have one function, 12, it should return 12. That's why if we put 1, 12 multiplied by 1 is 12, right? Correct. And that works. Any question? How is the streaming now?
Yeah, it's good.
It's better?
But it's balanced.
Okay, cool. Nice. So let me see what you did. I expect several approaches here. Rafa, if else, right? Function 1, function 2, all good. No elegance issues, good, nice, very nice. Ashley, the same thing, if else, all good. Jeff, the same thing, good. Daniel, do we need that, Daniel? Not really, right? That's a bit unnecessary. Correct. And also interestingly, Daniel used ternary, right, which we just explained.
Sorry,
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
answer there, might be a silly question, but what, I mean, can you use undefined? He can use that?
Yeah. So if function B is not provided, it will be undefined. So what Daniel is asserting is, if it's not undefined, that means that there is something on it, then multiply. If function B equals undefined, it will run else, right?
But you're saying that undefined is unnecessary?
Yes, it is. It is. Because if function B is provided, it will be evaluated as truthy. In other words, if we remove that bit on the right-hand side, it will be literally the same thing. Right? Literally the same thing. And actually, the way to prove that, look at, for example, what Rafa did on top. You see? So Rafa didn't check if function 2 is not undefined. He has said, if I have something in function 2, then multiply, use it. If not, ignore it. Right? So they are equivalent. And then Poppy, pretty much the same thing, sin negate the condition, right? The way we read that is, if I don't have function 2, then don't invoke it because I have nothing, right? It's pretty much the same thing on the other way around. And then Itamar, that's interesting. That's a different style, right? You see what Itamar did? Multiply function 1 by what? It depends. If I have function 2, multiply by function 2, otherwise just use 1. That's interesting as well, right? One line. Clever. And then we go to Richard. Ternary operator again. If I have function 2, use it, otherwise ignore it. Why we have that 0 here? Oh, that's interesting. Richard, can you hear us?
Hi. That's a typo. Don't know why that's passed.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't hurt. It's just ignored, right? But we don't need to pass any argument.
That's not supposed to be in there. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a
Okay.
typo.
Okay. That's fine, Richard. Okay. Nice. Cheers.
Yeah, it's just if it exists. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Richard, for the clarification. Then we got Jonan, ternary, Mo. That's interesting, right? This is what we explained as well. It's a different style. So Mo uses the default function, so then the code becomes even easier. And then finally, Bala, to make this even more interesting, look at what Bala did. It's really good, actually. I love that. It's very clever, right?
It's a very good list, basically. You can pass any number of functions.
Yeah. So he shouldn't reduce, right? So he doesn't need any if-else. It's pretty clever, right? I like it. It's really good. This is really good. Ignoring that probably he got a penalty here for the missing space, right? But apart from that, the algorithm is really good. Cool. Yeah, to be honest, I thought that question was going to be a bit boring, but they can see like 3 or 4 different styles, which make it a lot really interesting, right? So please spend some time trying to read and understand what your colleagues did, because I'm sure this is a very good way to learn some different coding styles, right? Any question, guys? No? Okay, let's do question number 2. Get sorted array. That was easy, right?
Yeah.
That was the easiest one, I believe. So get sorted array. We have a comma-separated list of arguments. How many arguments do we have? Generally speaking, we don't know, right? Here we say, okay, we got 3 arguments, but then we say, no, we got 4, and then no, 1, no, 2, so we don't know. Because we don't know how many arguments do we have, how do we gather them all? The rest operator, correct. Numbers. So what's numbers? What type of data numbers is? It's an array, of course. Numbers takes a comma-separated list of values and it gathers them all into an array. So then, how do we sort an array? Not sort. Sort what? Can we do that? Let's- So we want to sort the numbers in an ascending order, right? Starting from the smallest one. So if we try that, yes, works, right? That's the simplest way to solve it. Of course, we can use a callback function. How do we manually sort the array? Num A, comma, num B, return what? Num A minus num B or num B minus num A? Why A minus B and not B minus A? That's correct. That's correct, guys. So when we put the first one first, when we do A minus B, that means that the array will be sorted from the smallest to the biggest, right? That will return the same thing, as you can see. Right? Cool. What do you do here, guys? So you see, Rafa, sort. In that case, to me, sort that's completely acceptable because sort works really well with numbers. Do we have strings? No, we have numbers. So to me, this is an acceptable use case. Same thing for Ashley. Which solution do you prefer, Rafa or Ashley, and why? That's correct. That's correct. So with Ashley's, I don't know if arrays of what? Of strings, of boolean, I don't know. With Rafa, at least I know I'm dealing with numbers, right? Subtle issue, semantics. Right, with Jaf, it's even more complicated because with Ashley, at least I know it's an array, but with Jaf args, right, it's a bit complicated to read, even though technically speaking is absolutely correct, right? What else? Daniel, callback functions. Daniel, interestingly, is still using classic functions, right, instead of arrow, which is fine, no problem at all, right? Just curious. And then Poppy, again, an arrow function. Something, classic function, sorry. Something I don't really understand about Poppy's solution is, I don't really get the point of, so she creates a variable, and then she returns the variable. What's the advantage compared to literally just returning that? You know what I mean? It's a bug. Yeah. Ah. Yeah. Yeah, that's correct. But generally speaking, to me personally, that makes sense if we do something else here. Because if we do something here and we do something else here, I can add a breakpoint here, and then I can determine whether the problem is above or below, right? But in that particular case, in that line, we do nothing. So if we do a breakpoint here, okay, yes, we can do that, and we can inspect the value of sorted array, but if something goes wrong with sorted, I know that if something is wrong, it's here. So the divide and conquer doesn't apply, I believe, right? So we can probably just inline and do return, in my opinion. Itamar, same thing. Natasha, I believe she probably got a penalty here on this space, probably, right? Yeah, all good apart from that. And then Richard, the same thing, right? Array.sort. We also got Jonan, same thing. Did Jonan got any penalty here?
Yes.
Why? That's correct. That's correct. Daniel is completely right. You see, I struggle to understand that code because I struggle to notice that that return statement belongs to the sort method. So that should clearly be indented to the right. For example, like Natasha did. You see? That perfectly describes the structure of your function. Mo, the same thing, and same thing for Bala as well. And why Dave's solution didn't work? Why? What's wrong? Correct. dr.rest. Rest is not a method on the array prototype. Yeah, but that's interesting because if you change rest with sort, it should probably work, right? Really? You know that this is a classic excuse, Dave, because I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it and now it will work, right? So obviously that doesn't work, but if I change rest with short, it does work, right? Also, we got a warning, right? What is that warning? Expected indentation of one tab but found two spaces. What is that? Probably line number 4. Oh, right, correct. You see? Spaces. Tab. Right? That's it. So now it should perfectly work. All right?
Question.
Yep.
Why is that so important? Well, I mean, why does it always throw up an elegance?
Yes, because generally speaking, there are two ways to indent your code. Using tabs or using spaces.
What's the difference?
Visually speaking, none. Technically speaking, none. But it's generally speaking a good practice to use tabs because they are simpler. Right? Tab, you see, I can easily navigate through the code. You see?
Okay.
You can even see, you see that vertical line,
Yep.
Richard. So this is pretty good because we use the tabs. With the spaces, look, it's like in the middle of nowhere. Spaces are error prone because for each tab you need to type 4 spaces, right? That's why generally speaking, put a tab. Cool. Question number 3. Get merge arrays. Oh, that's interesting. So we have 2 arrays and we just want to merge them, right? So the first thing I will try to do is, well, how many arguments do we have? Tell me the argument names. Num array 1. Do we care if they are numbers or not? Are we going to add any math operation? We don't care, right? We just want to concatenate them. So let's just call them array 1, comma, array 2. And then return. Technically speaking, I believe you can do array 1. That's a new thing in JavaScript. Concat array 2. Right? So that will return a new array with the result of concatenating this and that. Right? Let's see if it works. It does work. However, if we pay attention to the description, and we'll see if everybody pay attention to the description, please use the rest parameter, right? So even though that's correct, and you got the points and all these things, the idea was to use the rest operator. There is a very sexy way to solve that problem using the rest operator, which is, I'm going to create a new array, empty array, and then, because essentially what they want is to have that, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what they want. But in reality, this is what we have. This is array 1, and this is array 2, right? So in other words, if I return array 1, comma, array 2, that will essentially return that, which is wrong. Because here we have a multi-dimensional array. We have an array of arrays, correct? How do we transform an array into a comma-separated list of arguments like that? Correct, correct. We can do that. Look. This is very sexy. If you have an array and you apply the rest operator, it will spread the values of the array into that, which is pretty clever, right? Because it's a very simple way to solve the problem. And that still works, right? Remember, the rest operator will have a different impact depending on how do we use it. When we use it here as part of the argument list, we're gathering. We pick a lot of numbers, strings, whatever, we gather them into an array. However, when we apply them on an existing array, it works on the other way around. We spread them into a comma-separated list of arguments, right? So, what you did here, Rafa, concat. What is the rest operator here? Nowhere, right? Still works, that's correct, same as Ashley. You see, Jaff, he used it, that's perfect. Again, if I have one subtle concern, the same thing I mentioned to Poppy before, right? He creates the array and then he returns it. I don't see the value, to be honest, of separating that, right? Cool. And then Daniel, that's perfect. It's literally perfect. Poppy. It's interesting. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. So she proves she knows how to use the rest operator, and she proves she knows how to use concat as well, right? So what's the point? So that doesn't really make sense, to be honest. It works, but the thing is, here we're gathering all the arguments from the second to the end, right? How many arguments we have starting from the second one? We have just one argument, right? So because of that, the gather is doing nothing. So essentially here, we just have, well, that's even more complicated than that, because as gather creates a new array, and this is already an array, here we have, correct, a nested array of arrays. Let's do something, guys, because I think this is a good exercise. Let's create a new snippet. Right, so let's create a new snippet. So look, I'm going to have a function concat that will receive array1, array2. If I invoke concat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we know we can do return array1, array2, right? That's the sexiest way to solve the problem, and it gives me the flattened version of the array. Cool. But then what Poppy did is dot 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 here array1.concat dot 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 array2. So what's the point? If we add a breakpoint here, we'll see that probably array2 is a nested array. Yeah, it's hard to read. But if you pay attention a lot to the screen, you will see that array2 is an array of one element, and that single element has 3 elements. That's why it's a nested array. In other words, what array.length will return? Array2.length. Correct. You see? And what array2 square bracket 0.length will return? Correct. You see? It's a nested array. But then, because we have a nested array, in the one line after, she's spreading the nested array to again go back to the original state of the array. So she's nesting the array, and then one line after, she's unnesting the array, reverting the operation, right? That's why that's correct, because in reality, that's literally the same thing as that's the same thing, right? That's the beautifulness of the rest operator. We can clearly see, even though to me that doesn't make any sense from a functional point of view, technically speaking it's good because it proves the two ways that REST operator works. Gather and spread, right? Any question? Yeah.
So, what is the spread from there? What's the gather in the argument?
Yeah, so I would expect it to spread.
Exactly. So I was expecting it to be CSVs.
No, because that's the thing. So the REST operator is a bit overloaded. It depends on where do you use it and how do you use it. When you use it as on the argument list, it always gathers. Always gathers. Right? When you use it inside of your logic somewhere, I believe it always spreads, even though I'm not 100% sure at the moment. But, say it again? Yeah. No, of course, in that case, of course it does, right? But then you can do, I don't know if you can do weird things like that. Probably not, right? That wouldn't make any sense. Will it? No, because of weird reasons. So generally speaking, yes. If you use REST operator in the argument list, gather. If you use the REST operator in the function on an array, spread. And what happens if we use the REST operator with a variable, for example? What happens if we do that? Gathers, spreads? No, it spreads. You see? That's interesting. I didn't know that, to be honest. So if you apply the REST operator on a string, it spreads the elements of the string into a comma-separated list. You see? I think it's actually creating an array. That should probably create an array. No, that's not even valid. That's the thing. Sometimes it's a bit hard to, predict. That doesn't make sense, right? Anyway, let's not make it more complicated. So remember the rule. Gather if it's part of the argument list. Spread if it's not part of the argument list, right? Any other question?
Yes.
No, yes, REST. REST is a bit special. Just REST. Rich.
Hi, Ricardo. So if on the function parameter,
Yeah.
Argument, is it? Argument?
Yeah, argument, yeah.
If you put the REST operator there,
Yeah.
does it mean that then if you later reference
Yeah.
the parameter,
Yeah.
you no longer need to use the REST operator again?
Well, no, because that depends.
So,
Yeah, go on.
yeah, so does it change it?
Yeah, of course
So
it.
every
Yeah.
time you reference it, it's referenced it in the way that it's been collected.
So that's a good question. If you use it on the argument list, it's actually mutating array2, right? So array2 originally is an array of one dimension. As soon as we do that, now array2 is a multi-dimensional array, right? But now, if we spread it again, it doesn't change anymore. So that's why this is a bit confusing, right? When you gather it, then essentially you are changing array2. When you spread it, you don't change it. I know this is a bit mind-blowing. I have opposite feelings about the REST operator. It's super powerful, but it's complicated to master because it's overloaded.
So if you put the REST operator inside
Yep.
parameter for console.log,
Yeah, here, for example, console. No, you
if
cannot.
you then referenced it again, it wouldn't be collected, would it?
So what do you want to put me in the console log? Array2? Or what? Or dot array2?
Just say when you take the parameter,
Yeah.
if you don't use the REST operator,
Here,
but then you used it inside console.log,
Ah.
you wouldn't be, you'd only be changing it at the point of invoking that function, as opposed to when you take it as a parameter in the function,
Yeah.
it's permanently changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Now we are not permanently changing array2. So if we run this example, look, that's interesting, right? why the console log displays 4, 5, and 6? Because array 2, as we remove the rest operator, is still an array, right? If I do a breakpoint here, and then run the example again, look, array 2 is an array of 3 elements, 4, 5, and 6. But then if we do a console log and we spread the values of the array, look at what happened, right? But still, we haven't changed array 2. So if we add another console log underneath, let's do that. Do you think that now array 2 will be still an array or will be a comma-separated list of arguments? Here.
It'll just be the original format.
Is the original format. Richard is correct. That's why remember, when you spread, you don't change, you don't mutate the array, right? That's why, look at this line, ... array 2, 4, 5, 6, expected. But now, if we display the array as it was, it's still an array. We haven't changed it. Right?
If it was the parameter and you put the rest in front, then it would be changed for the whole function.
As part of the argument list.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. If we put it here, ... now array 2 is a multi-dimensional array all the time. So if now we display the console logs, you see, array 2 is an array of 1 element, and then if we drill down, what's the first value and unique value of the array? Another array. Anything else? No? Cool. So, then where are we? Here you go. So let me have a look to the next question. We got time enough, I hope. Sorry, I think we didn't finish reviewing what you did, right? So Itamar, again, rest operator, Natasha, rest operator, right? Dave, not rest operator, right? I mean, that was pretty predictable, right? Apart from the fact that some people use concat instead of the rest operator, functionally speaking, it was pretty straightforward. Question number 4, change sequence. Oh, right. Higher order functions, right? I noticed that the higher order functions video was the most popular one last week in our YouTube channel. You spend probably more time with that video than with your family, I believe, right? Right, so let's do that, guys. Change sequence. How many arguments that function receives? 3, wrong. 1, correct. Tell me, argument name. Number. Number 1, right. What that function returns? Another function, correct. Do we have any argument on the inner function? Number 2, correct. And then, what that inner function returns? Another function. Argument? Number 3, that's correct. That's correct. Number 3. And then? Return what? Correct. We multiply these 3 numbers, right? Number 1 by number 2 by number 3. Will it work? No? Why not? Why yes? Any penalty? No? Okay, let's try. All good, right? Chain functions. You see why the indentation is so useful. Look what happens if I do that. It would be a bit super hard to understand, right? That's why indentation is so useful. Can we use the arrow functions here? Okay, let's do that. Return number 2 that returns number 3 that returns number 1 by number 2 by number 3, and because I don't want to get any penalty on the elegance, I'm going to do some cheating. num1, num2, num3. Will this work? It's pretty sexy, isn't it? Right? Yeah. Okay. Can we keep?
That's what I struggle with.
Yeah, we can. That's a good question. Do we need the parentheses?
We don't actually, but that's what I struggle with. Putting the parentheses, I mean, was doing all sorts of errors.
Remember, guys, parentheses are mandatory if you have more than one argument. Because we have just one argument, right? Still works, no elegance issue. You see how simple this can be used in arrow functions, right?
So Ricardo,
Yep.
yeah. When would you ever use this setup? So why wouldn't you just go straight to? So I don't get it basically. But
So
why would you use this setup? I don't
Yeah.
quite get what
Yeah.
the functions can do.
Yeah. So there is a good reason. That's a good question. Actually, we'll explain that in a future workshop. But there is a good reason why we sometimes want to do that. That looks a bit weird, right? Because someone will say, "Hey, why don't you do that?" And then you multiply them, and then you know, right? Yeah, no, but there is a reason. We can do an example if you want. Look, let's go to DevTools again. I'll show you. So imagine that we have a function called welcome, and the thing is, we want to set the type of welcome message, hello, right? And then the person, Jonan, right? So obviously, we can come here. So that would be message and then player. So then we can do return, welcome, message, not welcome, sorry. It's message, space, player, right? That works. Correct. But then we also want to say welcome. I want another welcome message to be welcome Mo. It works, right? And then of course we can say hi Michael, right? And it works, no problem at all. But then the thing is, what happens if now we change the algorithm and all the messages are the same? We just want to say hello, 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 hello. Right? That's still fine, eh? It works. But one of the reasons why we can use higher order functions as a return statements is to have a kind of constructor, to reuse part of the functionality. So we could do something. Let welcome function equals welcome hello, right?
Yeah.
So then my welcome message only receives, my welcome function only receives one argument, which is the message. And then here we can return function player. And inside of the inner function, I can do the trick, right? So why this is convenient? I mean, this is a very simplistic case, but you can imagine that in some cases, we want to prepare our function and we don't want to pass the same arguments all the time, right? So we initialize it once, and then we can do that. Right? So that will now display hello Rich. Exactly, right? So that's the idea. We'll explain that in a workshop. We'll explain why, technically speaking, the inner function, the higher order function, can access variables outside of the inner function. We'll talk about the scoping, right? Context.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Is there much way of using this kind of chain in RESTful web services?
Again,
We go down.
right? That's a good strategy, right? Anything else? No?
Yeah, Ricardo.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you've done your test there,
Yeah.
when you're invoking the function and then you're passing in three separate parameters, parameter lists.
Yeah.
So is that saying the first function that you hit,
Yep.
use this one, the next one that you hit,
Yep.
then this one,
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
and it's just like that. Just
Yeah.
the order.
That's the sequential order. Correct. If that any helps, Rich, something that I sometimes do is I add parentheses. Remember, parentheses are optional, right? But here I say, okay, my function change sequence returns another function, and that function, what that function returns? Something else. Oh, so wait a minute, that something else is another function, right? So I can add parentheses just to help myself understand what this function returns. And still, if you find this a bit confusing, of course, feel free to use a classic function. Would be a bit easier to read and definitely to debug, because we can add breakpoints here, right? And see what's going on after each line. Right, now it failed. Number 1 is not defined. Yes. Cool. Any question, guys? No? Let's review your code. Change sequence. So Rafa tried to use a ternary operator, right? Which obviously, yeah, it didn't work in that case, right? That's interesting, Ashley. You see, Ashley got the idea, right? The structure is correct. The structure actually is correct. Function returns another function that returns another function. The main problem is number 2, number 3, and that the last function should return number 1 by 2 by 3, right? Jaff. Yeah, that's the first thing we do. Perfect. Probably you notice, or maybe not, that Jaff use names here, right? I didn't. You see? You see the difference? My functions are anonymous. Jaff's functions are not anonymous, right? Both are valid in JavaScript. So when you have a higher than function, you can label it with a name, or you can leave it anonymous. I don't have any name here, you see? I can put it. Doesn't hurt. Yep.
That Jaff's structure, at least I can kind of, it's familiar.
Yeah.
It's more familiar than the other,
Yeah.
than without names. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Listen, I'm not complaining about Jaff's solution, right? I think that's absolutely perfect, right? That's fine. I'm just trying to explain that there are two different ways to do that. Actually, on top of approach, which is debugging, because if we add breakpoints, the debugger, if something goes wrong, hopefully JavaScript will tell, hey, there is an error on the function change sequence free, because the function has a name, right? So the JavaScript compiler will tell us where the problem is. With what I did, in my case, with an anonymous function, it won't be able to help us. So it will be a bit more complicated to debug an issue here compared to that, right? Anyway, Daniel, the same thing. Poppy, the same thing. Yeah, I guess pretty much. No, oh, I was going to say no one used arrow function. Yes, Richard did. Yeah.
How is it executing a named function
How is?
without invoking it by its name?
No, it's invoked. Even though it looks it's not invoked, it is invoked. It is invoked. We don't need a name because change sequence returns a function. That means
It just ignores it. If it's
ignores, correct. Correct.
Right.
So we know that change sequence returns a function. No problem at all. We can invoke it. We don't care about the name of the function. We know it's a function. Then we can invoke it. Right?
Cool, thanks.
That's right. That's right. Now you see semicolons, well structured, everything. So I'm very proud of you in that respect, right? As many others. Mo, he also used a narrow function, same as Richard, right? Yeah, so I think that's pretty, yeah, and Bala finally. So Bala, yeah, classic function. So all good, very readable. I like that. Last question, guys. Question number 5. It's probably the first time we are going to complete the intermediate training on time, right? Which is a good message, it's a good thing. These things are getting, easier. We are grasping all these things. Are consecutive numbers? Oh, I love that question. So we have an array of numbers, and we want to check if the numbers are consecutive or not. That was a bit complicated, to be honest. One of the most complicated ones on the intermediate. So then, how do we know if the numbers are consecutive? Well, if a number is the same as the next number minus 1, right? 1, 2, 3 consecutive. 4, 5, 7 not consecutive. I have no idea about what you did, but I'm going to propose you something. I'm going to use reduce. Maybe you all use reduce, maybe no one used reduce, I have no idea. But let me use reduce. Why? Because I think it's pretty elegant. So we can do return numbers.reduce. And then, because I don't know the name, I'll call it accumulator, and I'll probably rename it in a minute. And then the next parameter should be obvious. What's the name? What? Number. Right. Right. So that function will tell me if the numbers are consecutive or not. Because of that, I'm going to rename that already to are consecutive. That will be a Boolean, true or false, right? I'm going to assume out of the box that by definition the sequence, the default value, yes, I'm going to assume the numbers are Boolean, are consecutive. So then I'm going to look for the opposite. I'm going to check if at any case the numbers are not consecutive. So, generally speaking, can we do if, I know the number, but how do I know the next number? I love this example. It's because it's the very first time you may be tempted to analyze how do I access the index using reduce. Well, you can pass it. That's the third argument, index, right? To make it even more interesting, you will see on the expert training that there is a fourth argument. We'll see what the fourth argument is. But for now, having three is all right. So we're going to see if a number plus 1 equals numbers index plus 1. I never said that that was perfect, but that's the idea, right? I'm approaching the idea. So if the number is the same as the next number, essentially it's because for now they're consecutive, so return true. Else, return what? False. That's one option. That has few bits. For example, if index is 0, let's see on the first example, right? So if index is 0, we're comparing 1, right? 1, number is 1, plus 1, 2. Is 2 equals to element on index 1? Yes, no problem at all. Return true. For now, there is still consecutive. What happened on iteration number 2? What is the value of number? 2. 2 plus 1? 3. Is 3 the same as the next one? Yes. Return true. Looking good, eh? But what happened on the last case? What number? 3. 3 plus 1, 4. What's index? No? 2. Bala is right. Index is 2. What's index plus 1? 3. What do we have an index plus 1? Correct. Correct. Then we are checking, is 4 equal to undefined? No. Return false. In other words, the second one will work, correct, but look at the others. They fail. So, the first problem is we need to check if there is something else on the right-hand side. Because if we're evaluating number 3, that's it. I mean, that will never become false, right? So how do we do that? Well, we got the index, right? So we can do if index is less than numbers.length, and we can do something like that, ignoring the penalties and everything, right? We'll see that in a minute. So what that means, if index is the last element, 2, if index is 2, what's the length of the array? 3. So that's not fully correct yet, right? How do we check if we get on the last number? Plus 1, or length minus 1 as well, right? Can we do that? but that's not correct neither, right? Because if we are on the last one, it will return false, right? Or we can change the condition, index equals, or, correct? So here what we say now is, if we're on the last one, if that's truthy, I don't care about that, ignore it. You remember what truthy and something else return? Truthy or something else.
I think we can still do the and, right? If index is less than numbers of length.
Not really, no. What happens if we put the and? That won't work.
So if index is less than numbers of length,
Okay, if you put less than,
numbers of length, not minus 1.
not minus 1, like that.
Yeah.
So do you think that will work?
And numbers, yeah, that's it. Yeah. And we need to do else,
And what do we do here? Bala?
So there we are returning true into our consecutive. Yeah, and so obviously, if that's not true, else false, yeah.
That won't work, because on the last iteration,
Yeah.
well, first of all, this will be always truthy. So this is the same as putting nothing here.
Yeah, but that won't be always true because both need to be satisfied for that to be true.
Yeah, but this is always satisfied. Can you give me one simple example where this is not satisfied? Index is always less than numbers of length, because index starts at 0, then 1, then 2,
Oh, so yeah, you're right. So numbers are like -1.
minus 1, correct. So if we put minus 1, on the first one, index 0, that's 2, correct? Then index 1, this is 2, fine. But then 2 is 2 less than 2. No, on the last iteration, we'll be returning false. That won't work. Again, the same thing. Look, you see, these two fail, right? Because on the last iteration, true, true, and then on the last one, we change it to false, right? That's why this doesn't work. We need to do it on the other way around. We need to do, if we are at the end of the array, or either one or the other, right? Why that should, not should work, but why that should look better? Because if index is 0, is 0 equals to 2? No, but hey, no problem. Still, let me check the value. Is index equals than 2? When index is 1? Not yet. Again, no problem at all. I can still compare with the next one. Is 2 equal to 2? Yes. On the last iteration, that's truthy. So remember, what happened when you compare truthy or something? What will that return? Correct, 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 correct. So if that's truthy, this will be ignored, right? So if we are on the last element of the array, I don't care about consecutive, I don't care. Yes, true, that's correct, right? So, but will that work? That's interesting. Now it failed because of a different reason. I'll show you what the problem is. You know what the problem is, actually. Why did it always return true? It always returns true because eventually that will always happen. On every algorithm, right, will be on the last iteration of that algorithm. So then, regardless of if it was true or false, we change it to true, right? So I'm sure in that example at some point it was false, right? From 5 to 7, you see? True, false, but then here we change it to true, right? So, because of that, I believe the sexiest way to solve that is, we assume it was true by default, right? That's the default. So what I'm going to do is, instead of changing the value to true, just respect what it was. In other words, right? That's the sexiest way to solve it, because now we'll just respect whatever R consecutive was. By default true, it will be true all the time, remain true, unless we break the condition at any time. So if we try that, now it does work, right? So I strongly recommend you to do this question using reduce, because that will give you an idea about the type of problems you are going to find on the expert. Expert is not that more complicated than that. The only difference is you may have to transform from string to numbers. Maybe these are objects, so you need a few more steps. But the structure, the complexity in terms of logic is pretty similar, right? And what you did here, right? Interesting. Daniel. So he did pretty much the same thing I did. You see? First, if I'm still in the middle of the algorithm, I'm not at the end, and they are not consecutive, right? Because if I'm on the last iteration, the next one will be undefined, as we described, so he's trying to avoid comparing against undefined, right? Because of the AND operator. So if we're at the beginning, and they are not consecutive, then now it's not consecutive anymore. And he noticed that he doesn't need to change it to true anymore, right? By default, it's true. It may remain true forever or may not. But once it's false forever. That's nice. I like that, Daniel. Then Jaff. This is very pragmatic, right? Very academic. Look, he creates a for loop, right? And then he said, okay, let me iterate, starting from the, that's very interesting as well. So he starts from index 1, because he's comparing that one, because he's comparing against the previous number, right? Which is very interesting. But I have a concern about that, Jeff. Even though I really like it, I think there is a scenario where that wouldn't work. You're assuming that the difference is greater than 1 to change it. But what happens if the previous number is, you know what I mean? Why
yes,
great?
If you're going descending.
Descending, correct.
Yes, you're right.
That wouldn't work, right?
Correct.
So to make it perfect, the difference should be what? Either greater than 1 or probably greater than, let me think, you know my point, right? I may not be correct.
What's the term? I forgot. Just ignore the sign.
Yeah, ignore the sign, correct. Yeah, but apart from that, and I'm not even 100% sure, I'll have to test that to prove if that's absolutely right or not. Yeah, apart from that, I like it, it's really good. Itamar, the same thing, right? You see Itamar, what he did? Same as Daniel, pretty much, right? He got a penalty here, but apart from that, reduce, same thing, right? Pretty much the same thing. Once it's false forever. Natasha. That's interesting, right? She's using the ternary operator. Oh, no, listen, that's completely different, right? Oh, look at that. That's very clever. You got what she did, right? She's using the fourth argument as well. Ah, nice. So she's adding 1 every time the numbers are consecutive. So at the end, she's checking the count, right? So she's evaluating if the count is the same as the length. If it's the same, it's because all the numbers are consecutive. If one of the numbers is not consecutive, she doesn't increment the count, and then that wouldn't work, right? It's very interesting, very different, to be honest. And then Richard, it's pretty much the same thing Jaff did, right? For loop, comparing each number against in that case the previous one, and that's pretty much it. If what he did, the main difference is in the middle of the loop, if something goes wrong, he returns the result straight away. And at the end of the journey, if we're still alive here, if we haven't returned anything, that means that the numbers are consecutive, right? That's a different approach. And finally, not finally, we got Mo. So more, it's the same thing, right? I mean, that's pretty much the same thing. Reduce, it's true by default, it may be false at it. So I believe that was probably the most complicated question on in the intermediate. And I'm happy because even in that case, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people who managed to solve it, right? So yeah, I mean, generally speaking, the challenge looks really good. Really, look at how many green colors around, right? So really good, guys. Time's up. So, any question? No? Richard, Yonan? Hello?
All good.
No?
All good.
Okay, cool, perfect. Thank you, guys. Cheers.